can you automate what management consultants do? Well, we thought so, and we decided to build a software that automates the consulting process targeted towards small businesses. So instead of them hiring a BCG or a Deloitte, they could subscribe to our software. It asks them questions, pinpoints their challenges, and gives them customized resources like brand positioning workshops or automatically generated competitive reports in order to grow their business. But as we navigated this COVID-19 environment, we realized that entrepreneurs aren't worried about building their businesses. They're worried about surviving. So then their attention gets focused or actually like re-skewed. And we started thinking, all right, are there any other industries where you can have a technology that asks questions and then provides content as people respond to those questions? Because fundamentally, our company is broken out into three segments: asking questions, clients responding to questions, and then following up with those responses with customized resources and support. So what we did was say, well, shoot, there are millions of kids across the United States who are still going to have to take their PSATs and their ACTs and their SATs. There are still students who are applying to get in grad schools, but their GMATs and their LSATs have been postponed. This is the time that they're studying. The challenge is, like, a lot of the software that's built is built by academics, and those softwares are not user intuitive, they're not immersive, they're not friendly. So what we decided to do was, all right, well, let's just reskin our software, replace our database of consulting questions with PSAT and SAT questions, replace the content with active content of students who have actually taken these tests and saying, hey, look, I would love to help you. Here's why you got this question wrong. And bridging that gap between competency for the standardized test, which we feel confident our software is more intuitive, is more user-friendly, and a little more empathetic than a lot of the other software that's out there. And that's how we decided to pivot into standardized testing and connecting questions and challenging questions with content.
All right. And then panelists, if you want to take it away, ask any questions of David.
Hi, David. This is John from NC Idea. So you may well, you seem nice job in a short amount of time, sort of giving us that quick intro to everything.
Thank you.
And now I'll take your word for it that you'll be more intuitive and better. But there's already a bunch of test prep sites and software out there that are reasonably well known. How are people going to find you?
Yeah, so prior to this entire environment changing, we've done a pretty good job about getting signups for our core software. And that's just been through Instagram and Facebook advertising, where we were able to spend about $7,000 and generate 20,000 signups, email signups. So we're just going to replicate that process in terms of focusing in on parents who are making these purchasing decisions and target them through digital ads. So the user acquisition is really just through the digital medium. And most of the time, I think your age range of people who are purchasing primarily on Facebook are in the 45 to 55 range, which are right there where our parents are. And those are the ones making the purchasing decision.
Hey, David, this is Rob Cummings. Thanks for that this morning. So essentially, you're creating a marketplace where you have the students and then you have experts on the other side. So as John asked, you have to recruit both. What kind of traction have you seen since you made the pivot? How many experts do you have? How many students have started using the service?
Yep, it's been low, and I think that's been intentional. But on the student side, we've gone to places like tutors.com and honestly just post people. We've said, hey, look, this is the idea that we're trying to do. Would you be willing to go into your recesses of your mind and put questions up on this platform, but also come in through an administrative portal and be able to video chat and dialogue with people? So those are 3 students. And then on the other side, with the people who can actually write these questions, because you can't just go take a GMAT book and copy and paste the copywritten questions, are just 2 individuals that we've been able to find through Upwork.
And is this going to be sustainable moving forward? So post-COVID, are you going to go back to your original model on the business entrepreneur side, or are you going to continue with SAT, ACT, et cetera, the standardized testing model?
Yep, I'd love to have a fixed answer, and that fixed answer would be 100% we're going to go back to the entrepreneurial market, because that's where I see the bread and butter, and that's where the market opportunity is. That's where we've invested most of our capital and our resources. The caveat to that is, if this takes off relatively, I think we will put more resources towards it. But hands down, the market really is the entrepreneurial market. This is something that we're seeing, over the next 3 months, maybe picking up 500 to 1,000 students that we can charge $100 per access. It isn't something that we're looking to, create this entire new business model off of. It's something to weather the storm and identify an adjacent market that we can capitalize off of.
Thanks, Dave. Rob, are you all set? Thanks for the pitch. I think your pivot creativity, I think that's a great one. Could I ask just who is Framewrk, like, or what's your background? Both for why did you go into, or why are you competent to go into the consulting management field, and then also to make this pivot, so like why you?
Yeah, 100%. So first, who am I, or who is Framewrk? Which at this point, those lines get kind of blurred. But my experience comes from a few Fortune 500 companies and then small boutique organizations to startups. I went to a school where we did a co-op program, and for 6 months of your curriculum, you were in school, and the other 6 months you're working at a company like J&J or Private Wealth Management. So I've got some diverse industry experience in that regard, but where I went deep instead of quantity was in terms of startups and just working with a lot of different small businesses and startups to help grow their business, particularly on the marketing side and creating lead generation funnels and then financing in order to raise money. So that's where my experience lies historically for the consulting piece. Specifically for this adjacent market and this pivot, I used to work at a company and run their sales department. It was a mobile app called Scholly that was actually funded on Shark Tank, but we were selling services where we were matching students to scholarships. So I have a lot of experience in terms of selling to institutional schools and understanding what their value propositions are. But through that, you end up getting experience with understanding what's the user experience of students and what testing they have to go through in order to access these scholarships.
Okay, thanks. And a follow-up question, what are you going to use the funds for specifically?
Yeah, it's two things that we're using the funds for. And the first is engineering. We need to get an administrative portal where the student mentors can actually go in and video record their dialogue and their tutorials. And the second is we're allocating resources to legal agreements, which is just standard contracts. What I noticed when I worked at Scholly is that we had high turnover in terms of the students who were just uploading the scholarships. They would just go research. And what they wanted was more buy-in and more connection to the organization. So I think the way we'd like to structure it is by saying, hey, look, we will give you a revenue share as opposed to just a $15 per hour thing for going in there. And by that, you have buy-in from these students who are a little more like connected with your organization, and will need that money for those legal structures of those deals.
Okay, thanks.
David, do you have any idea of what you can charge for this and what your revenue is going to be, what that cost sharing might look like? I know it's early, but what have you figured out so far?
Yep. On the charge side, we're looking at charging $100 for unlimited access and then having an hourly rate that students can charge for when they're engaging with students. The beauty about it is we have a lot of this technological infrastructure done, so we don't have to charge the $1,200 that tutors charge or the $600 per book, which is fucking ridiculous anyway. Oops, sorry if they're younger kids for that. On the second side about the structuring the revenue share, no, I'm not 100% flushed out there. So I'd love to charge a base percentage of anything from 1% to 3% in terms of off of the deal. But it really comes down to a margin question on how much do we generate and can we spread out across the cost of the individuals who are doing the tutorials.
All right, it looks like we've got about a minute left. Any other questions from the panelists? Good. Any questions from the audience? If you want to add that into the chat box. We've got one here. Do you consider remaining in the small business space and pivot more to cost reduction strategies versus the growth perspective? I see the question, driven diagnosis, supporting what owners could do to reduce costs.
I'm a little confused on the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's did you consider remaining in the small business space and pivoting more towards cost reduction strategies versus growth companies?
No. It's not a cost reduction strategy as much as it is a growth strategy, revenue oriented.
Okay. All right. All right. I think we're good. So thanks. Virtual
Thank you
applause
all.
there for David.